Now I'm joined by Aaron. How you going, Aaron?
Good, thanks. How we doing?
Very, very good. So we've just had our quarterfinals. We're into our semis. So we have Vincent versus who was he versing?
Vincent is playing Jonathan.
That's right. And then the one we're streaming today is Jason.
Yep.
So let's go straight into that now, and we can see they're off to a start straight away. And we have here Jason Lee and Jason Z, who we just saw Jason Z take out 2-1 against Christopher. I don't know, he's straight into it. As compared to the last few where he's been a little bit more hesitant, he's just straight into dropping cards this time.
Yep. So we've got Water Wind versus Lightning Earth. And we've got 2 early forwards. And it looks like we're just setting up our early game.
So this just the build starts now. Discarding the Riku there for to play that. Not Riku, sorry, Waka. My bad.
One of the big players in that deck.
So you're surprised with the results we had? Obviously, Vincent come through, coming in 8th, and then knocking out.
And then knocking out the first seed. And it was pretty dominant as well. Like
sometimes you have a particular deck you can't play against. You know what I mean? Like you have a style that you struggle with, and maybe that was just his number.
I think he's got a similar matchup as well, which is quite good for him if the matchup plays out similarly to the way that his previous round matchup played out. Vincent's looking in a good spot, at least matchup wise.
So we got the Steiner and the Zidane out.
So the early starts and the searches.
There's the Riku. Zidane out again.
Pretty big turn.
There's Steiner, obviously, with that he gets the EX burst where you get to search for another Final Fantasy IX character.
Yep.
So that's a great little thing there with a deck full of Zidanes and the Garnet
yeah,
as well.
So it's both when he enters the field and off the EX burst, so he's always finding back value. So it's almost like he's a 3-drop.
Yep.
In a sense of he gets a card back and he also gets a card of choice, so it kind of makes up for his poor stats on a 5 CP monster, right?
If you're talking about like his power to cost, it's not great, but he does have a pretty good ability. So
I feel like as the game goes on and we get more sets, he's likely to be one of the cards on the chopping block. Right now, he's kind of pretty good, but his power level, unless the other cards get better, might just drop off.
So having a quick look in now. That's a Kefka if I'm going off the art, yeah.
The one heroic in his deck.
Spending a lot here. Plays the Garnet.
So there's lots of big drops coming out of Jason Z's deck. Jason Lee's deck.
So Kefka gets the boost there with the backups there. Garnet's in discard now. So he's got the 1 point of damage there, Jason.
So just the start of picking away with the little guys. we're kind of set on the early game. Now we come into the big drop territory.
Is it the unit of Riku ready to go? There comes a Steiner, so he's going to have another quick look.
Just having a look at his hand to decide what he wants to go for.
There yet.
He's still looking. He's just looking at his hand to determine exactly what he needs from his deck at the moment.
Here comes Zidane.
Zidane's good. It's got multiple modes, so the ability to draw or make your opponent discard when it comes into play. It's nice when you get it in this spot and you can discard a card and drop it for 3.
There it is, yeah. So of course he's another one with a great little kind of active ability.
Yeah, and he has Steiner, which is reducing his cost.
Yeah. There's a second point of damage there. So a bit early out of the gate here with Jason Lee, just chipping, taking his swings while he's got him.
Yep, just bit by bit. So he didn't activate the Brave by having, I think the forward gets 5 different backups, and it gets pump off 3 different kinds of backups. And there's the leader. Probably the biggest hitter in a lot of these decks.
Yeah.
When you try and get rid of it, it does damage. It's kind of just a pain in the butt. It's got this huge power, as well as you can't touch it without taking damage. So there's not a lot of easy ways around it. When you use abilities on it, you discard a card. It's
one of those it helps you kind of play the game your way, because you restrict what the actual opponent can do to you, whether that's attacking, whether that's using summons or whatever the case may be.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely filling this control kind of role alongside just being a kind of good beater and something that you can curve into and really put a fair bit of pressure on your opponents with.
He's good there. It's hard because you've got to go like... Jason's having a look. Which one? Well, I mean, they're both out at the moment, so I guess it still counts.
Seems like there's a lot of just like thinking about where they're going and how they're trying to map this game out in the early part. You know, every decision is quite a careful, considered one. It's not kind of much of a jam fest.
Well, I mean, that's been the way that Jason Z's played basically the whole time, is much more kind of slow-paced game compared to some of the other decks we've seen where it's been... we had some stomps very early on.
I think he's trying to stop those from happening, and his deck is trying to play for that kind of game. Certainly cards like Steiner, cards that are looking for other cards or can net cards from themselves.
Trying to find the ideal conditions for your own game.
Yep.
Wonder what he's thinking
We're
here.
about to see an Archer activation.
He's weighing it up. So there's his 3.
Leviathan. That's going to be our Chichulin, the Empire.
So because being a summon, of course, he takes that little bit of damage as well.
When he targets the deleter.
Yeah.
Cool, and so we've got some spells being thrown back and forth. Trying to
yeah,
keep that
a very
deleter up.
patient game, shall we say.
I think this might be a big part of the game, this single combat. But they've really just dumped all their resources on this combat fight between Deleter and Zidane. I think Lee's come up on top. He's still got his Deleter. It was a pretty interesting turn where we had like 5 cards come down from Lee essentially to try and win that battle, and from Z, and then we had Lee fight back with his entire grip, 2 summons, and
there's another point of damage there. Jason Lee very methodical. Just as soon as he can get his points in, he's just taking the hits.
the Cyclops was enough in the end to finish off to make that combat not exciting for the Zidane.
So, we've got the Waka as well in his damage pile, so that's no fun for Jason Z there. There's the Riku.
What's the card he played before that? It's Pain into Riku, right? Pain for the Riku,
Yeah.
yep. Feels with the Pains and the Steiners and that there is a lot of search in Z's deck to help him kind of piece together at least card advantage, or at least to get back to neutral when he plays a guy, he gets another guy, and as the game moves on, that's letting him kind of move up in cards or move up in backups.
Yeah, Jason Lee's getting some. I don't know. He's just getting some really good trades there. Obviously, the one before was
That big
really
combat
good for
round.
him. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of feels like if that deleter can't be dealt with, it's just going to take the game.
Yeah. There goes the lightning as well.
Lots of pressure.
Yeah, I mean, he's coming out strong just to start with. Like yeah. There's another one.
Lightning searching for Odin.
Plays the Riku again. We didn't play that War of
That's
Attrition, but
looking
yeah.
like a pretty sizable discard pile.
Yeah, easiest way to tell is the shadows there. It's yeah, the way the lights are set up, you're always going to see him. So he's about halfway through his deck at the moment.
I feel like when you're ahead in board state, being able to go search for an Odin is pretty good. It just ensures that you're going
There's your
to keep
pain again.
staying in front. Getting that free untap. Seems like we've got a lot more power on Lee's side of the board right now.
Yeah, I can't see how Jason Z comes back in this. It's going to take a lot. He's going to have to really drag it out. And
Because he's just had to trade off a bunch of guys in the last few turns. It looks like about 20 cards in the graveyard plus like 10 on the board in hand. So he's probably got another 20 cards in his deck. So we're not near the point where Mill is likely to be what's happening. Like, it's a chip away battle.
Yeah.
And as you start to deal damage to them, obviously you start chipping away even faster.
it's the war of attrition, and yeah, so there's the Barts. Lets him play all the wind again.
Yeah, lets him cheat a bunch of, so he plays the Barts out, gets a bunch of resources back, and then can play more spells. So it's kind of a cheating way to get extra characters, which is a lot what goes on in this game. You're trying to find ways to get extra cards when you play things, or free guys, or free untaps. You're trying to look for more than just the value of the card, typically speaking.
He plays Barts, gets his one
First
damage on
damage.
Jason Lee. Yeah, that's his first hit there.
Getting quite aggressive here.
I guess he feels he has to. Like, he's, you know.
I think he also has a Leviathan in hand. He
Ah,
keeps
there we
shuffling
are,
that to the
yeah.
top of his hand, so
He's obviously thinking about it at the very least. So there's the Lulu buff there.
only on the lightning.
And then lightning, yeah. Takes
So
a
he's not
second
really
hit.
looking to get too involved in this combat. Maybe he's just thinking that he swings back and he's kind of in front
Yeah,
on the race.
He's
if,
got to be
you know,
assuming that he can just come back and, yeah.
especially
like,
if he
hit him
can
hard.
Odin something out of the way and
Yeah.
has multiple guys. So that might be the end of our attacking. There we go.
So it's,
Discard for an archer.
So
Blowing
that's,
up a backup.
she loses the buff then, so...
Yep. And then it gets harder to cast things like Deleter and other cards in Lee's deck. And Lulu comes straight back down.
There we are. That was good to see you.
Can't be
Welcome
denied.
back.
I don't think Jason wants another turn like that. You know, if he just passes the turn and nothing really changes, that's not good for him. Feels like he's just going to take another couple of damage in the same kind of scenario.
Plays the lightning there.
So it seems like we're going to have another busy turn in battling.
There's the lightning gone.
Cool.
And
So that looked pretty good. That last few laps of turns for Z. You know,
yeah,
maybe
like,
he's in the driver's seat now. So
Yeah,
Aerith comes
it's-
in, untaps 3 of his guys. He's kind of getting to play more of his cards. He has more backups.
yeah,
You know?
I didn't see it kind of going this way. Like, you know, is he going to go ahead with that? No.
I think when there's known information, it definitely significantly changes the combats and what
Yeah.
people are trying to do. And
It takes a hit. So that's 3 damage now to Jason Lee. So he's got the refresh error, so the backups come back into play.
Yeah, that was
Takes
earlier.
the fourth hit.
Turn.
I mean, I assume he's hoping he can.
I think he doesn't want to trade.
Jono beats Vincent game 1.
So apparently Jono's beaten Vincent in game 1 on the other game.
Cool.
So there's some news there. Not a lot of news happening here.
Yeah, we're kind of just
It's a
in
quiet
this
Jason night
grindy
right now.
battle.
Yeah, they're definitely yeah.
Okay, and we start working on the deck.
Alright, here we go.
So working on multiple fronts.
So let's see what Jason Lee does here. Is he attacking Mr. Kefka? Or so at the moment, yeah, he trades with the Steiner. The Lulu buff making him 6,000, so they just trade. The leader in.
Cool.
Takes a
and
hit, so 5
in
damage
the
there for
race.
Jason Z. I don't know, like, are they just going to keep slugging each other until one loses? Or, like,
I think it's going to be a very measured approach, but I think Z is also trying to set up for a deck out. So
Yeah.
I think he might go from, part of decking people out is dealing them damage. As you deal them damage, you have more chance of decking them because they have -5 or 6 cards in their deck.
yeah, stretch the resources as thin as possible.
Yeah, so push them on multiple fronts. As soon as he realizes that he has to switch into D, then he will. He might just burn some of his guys in making that a possibility. So I wouldn't even be surprised if he doesn't really cause too much more damage in this game. The interesting thing about that is it forces Lee to have to be the aggressor. If they both
He has
if they
to,
both
yeah.
stay still at the moment, I think Z's just going to end up
Just
decking him
choke him
out.
out, yeah,
He's
yeah.
just taking like a card a turn off him. That's Sky. Okay, straight to the top. He likes that Dorgan. So Dorgan lives a turn. He can use the Dorgan ability to sacrifice him and remove Dorgan and another creature from play. So it answers just about everything that's not damage and, as long as they're not shutting down activated abilities. So Guy's particularly good against the ice decks because he stops all the mucking around with freezing and dulling your guys. Not as good versus the water side of things. So more of a choice that you make, trying to make your deck better against certain other decks in the metagame. He's still quite a big guy with Brave, so he's not a bad body on his own, but he's not
Takes another point there.
like Steiner and plenty of other cards that are gaining advantage.
We've seen lots of Steiners this like the whole day. So
Cool, so Jason's got 7 cards in hand, so he's kind of forced to action this turn. So we're in his second main phase now. I guess we could still be in attackers.
So that's a Leviathan there. Back into his hand.
Yeah, we're still in attacking.
It's in there for Bartz. Gets his
Untap
back
the
off, untap, yeah.
resources.
Again,
It
there's
feels
the
pretty
pain.
good in the late game. He just seems to have better ability to use his resources.
Yeah.
once he gets up cards. Untapping to untap to
Yeah, he's got a
you
lot
know,
of that like repeat combo kind of play.
yeah, just keep going off.
Yeah, I think it really is just hoping to. I guess he's got to hope to deck him out or something. He just, I don't know. Well, I mean, he keeps giving him all this damage. I don't know what. It's strange play from Jason Lee. I'm surprised he hasn't. I thought he would have taken it by now, to be perfectly honest.
I think that the opportunity cost of some of the attacks, like if things went bad and he didn't have the cards or
Yeah.
didn't want to burn the resources, he kind of goes, well, what game do I play? But then the longer that this game goes on is the more Jason's deck just seems to be finding more cards than he can find. So in the war of attritions, like we just saw how many crystal points tapped in a turn? 9 crystal points tapped in a turn. He still has 2 untapped. He had to discard, I think, 1 card to make that happen. So it might be pretty hard to keep up with the cards in that kind of sense.
Just feeling out what the best play is here. So he's going all in with forwards now.
Drop a
Lays
bunch
it
of
down.
guys, lay the whole hand. So that blew Lee's entire hand on dropping out forwards to try and even up the board state. Ramsar gets bigger when you can spend crystal points on him. So having no access to that kind of leaves him a little bit unprotected for the turn, or not as good of a
Not as good as he could
defensive
be in this,
creature as he
yeah.
could be. But probably the trade-off of having three characters, 3 forwards on the board is what Lee decided that he needed to be doing. Cool, that makes sense.
That's lightning off as well.
Yep, trade your 3-drop for a 5-drop.
But that's 6 damage for Jason Lee.
So there's no more sitting back.
It's time to get on with it. It's the trade
Cool.
there as well. This is he done as well.
That's the one that makes your opponent discard a card that you get to choose, so you get to see their whole hand. Which, typically, that kind of effect's really good in most card games. In this game, because the draw 2, I feel like some of those effects are less good than
They're mitigated a little bit.
Yeah, they're mitigated a bit by your opponent just drawing back into the good stuff that you got them to get rid of. But sometimes an opportune Zidane hitting the perfect card can be an absolute blowout, especially if your opponent's been building towards a game plan around a particular card and you can take that from them.
Okay.
If you can't see it on the
Yeah. Apparently, Jason Z is pocketing 2 Aeriths because it's bit tough to see there in what he's holding. So.
And he's got the Aerith backup in play.
Yeah. Yeah, there they are.
Cool. Right to the front. Leviathan to return the guy back to hand, so he's forcing the deleter block.
So there's the deleter dealt with, I guess. And is that it? That's it?
That's it for game 1.
Wow.
Cool.
I mean, it's not the ending I think anyone was expecting.
No, he just ground his way back into a point where the game got in contention, and then just started to force through damage and force through the spot. It's really good how his deck is operating on untapping so many of his resources and allowing him to dump lots of cards in the later game, and the way that he's playing his hands is allowing him to have multiple cards in his hands in the late game.
And just, yeah,
I think it's sometimes for a sacrifice in the early game to generate that advantage in the late game. I think if the games kind of start slow, he has quite a good long game setup.
And as we mentioned earlier, Jono is 1 up against Vince in the other game. We haven't heard any more since, so they must still be playing it off stream.
Battling it out.
But yeah, so this is, I mean, if Jason Z wins this, he's guaranteed Japan.
Yeah,
so
it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Jason Lee does here, but he just can't let that happen again, because it was painful to watch. It was just like watching a boa constrictor just strangle the life out of him. And
he had the early game and he had quite a good setup, and then he just couldn't keep pushing through the pressure.
He just couldn't capitalize on it. And I mean, yeah, you've always obviously got to respect what your opponent has in their hand, but I think he's just got to, maybe a little bit of YOLO there.
He had that
mulligan there.
He had that big trade, and it seemed to go in his favor. It seemed like if he won that trade and he got to keep a deleter around, which was super important for his game plan, that should have been kind of enough in some ways. Okay, so Z's chosen to draw in this game. Lee's chosen to play.
Yeah.
Cool. So straight with lots of 2-drop backups. So he's setting up his resources nice and early. Okay. Interesting to see what Z gets rid of from his hand. Oh, whole hand.
Okay, he's double mulliganing.
So Mogul lets you pick any number of cards in your hand and put them on the bottom of your deck, and then draw that many cards.
It's the Riku.
So he can kind of reset his hand, plus he's looking for 2-drop in the early game, because that's the best way to go about your backups. Then when you start casting more expensive backups, they kind of seem very discounted. So we've just both gone into a war of backup.
He's dropped some big cards to get there as well. Like it's Shintoto and yeah.
So I guess this leads into some of these big lightnings and other things that Jason Lee can do from his deck, that discarding one card, playing a powerful lightning, or playing a deleter, or playing things like that. Obviously, quite powerful options for him.
There's your Steiner. So he's going to be searching straight away. There's your Zidane.
Yep, this seems like the 1-2
combo, the
all
1-2
the
punch.
time.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that he does not end up using all his crystal points on quite a few turns. He seems to like playing the Zidane as a 2-drop and leaving like one resource left. Obviously, that was a great draw for Lee, hitting a lightning. He needed to hit a big drop because his last card from his hand got hit. So I think Z could think that potentially Lee was setting up for that big drop on that next turn. So I think it's quite clever him taking the last card from from Lee's hand, and then hoping that he misses anything good on that turn. Because like if he just hits double backup on that turn, Z's got 2 forwards versus like no board, so he starts really pushing ahead pretty quickly. Oh, and that's all the deleters.
Wow, there you go. The other
One in
deleter,
the
of course,
bin,
was
and yeah,
two
two
is damage.
as damage. I don't know if anybody's ever played Pokemon, but it feels that way when, you know, all your prize cards are kind of put away from you and you can't access any of them, and, you know, there's kind of a little bit painful thing when you're like, oh, I've lost any access to that card for the rest of the game.
So apparently Vincent in the other game is up 5-1 at the moment. So potentially
Wow.
heading to a game 3 there. Maybe like we did before if this one wraps up anytime soon, which doesn't look likely, let's be real.
Yeah, we'll see. You know, sometimes games swing quite quickly, but the play speed is a little bit different. I think it's more measured. I think once they got off the clock,
They all slowed down.
yeah, at least a little bit. You know, make sure that they're making the right plays. And you know, if I was playing for a flight and a big tournament and that kind of thing, I'd be pretty deliberate about my plays as well. All right, so we got Pain, bunch of resource untapped, Pain Riku combo, and
Back to the hand.
there's the bounce. Cool, so we're getting in for some... We're trying to get in for some damage. And that's an Odin.
Okay, so yeah, game 3 and the other one as well. So
Cool.
they've moved on to game 3 for that one. So it's Jono 1, Vincent 1.
So we're not going to get to move across to a third game of theirs.
No, we won't. But I mean, Jason Lee on 3 down. I don't know. Like, I don't know. He's playing. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough without those deleters. Yeah.
It didn't seem to do too much last game, though. Like, I think it was
yeah.
more a nuisance than anything for
But
Z.
sometimes that is, having that
Enough,
distraction,
yep.
yeah, it's just enough sometimes to swing it the way you need to.
I like that he's really taxing Lee's hand, bouncing the lightning back when he knows Lee will have to discard another card to put the lightning back down, and then can't really do anything for the rest of his turn. It feels like if he can keep training those kind of actions together and just be inconvenience for Lee,
Tiny discard
that he's
pile
just
on the hands
gonna
too, yeah.
mess with him enough.
Right, so he's got the forwards down again.
Yep, the Gilgamesh.
Gilgamesh.
He's leaving resources back. He's leaving some of his resources back, so he had to discard a card to allow that to happen.
There's your Gilgamesh, so yeah.
So, has some utility against Leviathan, as well as just a big guy. Its ability is also quite powerful. And after he receives 1 more damage, then it becomes active. So, in some ways, receiving that extra point of damage, if you can keep the Gilgamesh on the table, is kind of pretty cool for Lee. So, we've declared a blocker by the look of things. I think Lee only has 2 cards in hand, so it's Lightning and 1 other card.
So he trades the pain off there.
So that he can try and get in with both guys for enough damage. I think he's happy to trade both 2 for 1, but his Steiner got a card.
There's another Gilgamesh there. Lightning. Gilgamesh is back.
Cool. So we get that Z's pretty happy seeing that Gilgamesh on the next turn, that, you know, he didn't have an active Gilgamesh.
Yeah, yeah.
Here comes the damage.
There it is. And he just takes it. Nothing much he can do there.
I don't think he would even throw cards away
Nah.
if he could. I think he's looking to do other things with his resources.
Just
Lightning comes
down.
back down, goes and gets an Odin.
Does he have one? There was definitely one in the discard. And
He has quite a few in his deck,
Yeah.
so he has three
so
of
he's
1 to
got
3
both
and
of different
2 of 1
types,
to 4.
right,
So he's
okay.
got heaps of Odins in his
Yeah,
deck.
yeah,
I
okay.
don't think we're ever missing getting
Missing-
an
yeah,
Odin.
yeah.
That feels pretty bad if you drop a
Yeah.
6-drop that gets that spell
Keeps,
and then you
keeps having
can't
sharp out of
get
Valhalla,
it.
that's fine, yeah.
So we might see some decent untapped turns happening soon, or an attack on library with the untap effects to get multiple attacks at the cards in library. Because he's got a reasonable whack of time, because he could, in the current board state, he could still take 3 swings before he would die if there was no more creatures, no more forwards that went to the board.
There's a Waka.
Waka. We haven't seen any Wakas this game, so it's hard to see Z's hand at the moment.
Yeah, he's very stream unfriendly with the way he holds his cards.
Odin takes
Okay,
care
and
of
there's
that.
Waka.
But that was known.
Doll's lightning there. It's a pain, isn't it? I'm pretty
Yep.
sure it is, yeah.
So he gets a burst off that. He gets to go searching. Oh.
Oh.
Gets the other half. I think it's more just about the extra cards than anything else, really. Oh, that's a nice one. So he's hit double EX burst this turn. And a Ramsar. And nothing at the end of the turn. Cool, so attacking the backups, taking off the double lightning. Aerith to untap. Barbarishian comes down on Z's side. So it's funny, the game that Lee seemed in front, he ended up losing, and the game that Z seemed in front, we might be seeing a similar thing happen. I think there's still quite a bit of play left in this game.
So yeah, it's a very methodical match, shall we say?
We're seeing that both players have quite a lot of options and quite a lot of play. Have you got used to where the shadow is, where you start going, that deck's looking real thin?
Say again?
Have you got used to looking at the shadow to
Yeah,
go to where
well, I
a
mean,
deck looks really thin?
It's a pretty good indicator of what we're looking at. I mean, he has put a lot of cards through, so yeah.
Cool, so the 10k forward holds the fort pretty well for a turn.
A little bit of extra damage there.
Okay. No, we're still coming in, and we've got resources to spare. So this is where taxing those resources is going to come into some amount of play for Z, because there's not access to.
There's Leviathan.
You can see after Lee uses the resource to pump up his guy, now he doesn't have access to relay him onto the field. Or he does, but he might need to discard cards or do things that maybe he doesn't want to do, that he gets forced into like a combat spot that really harms his resources.
So we've got Vincent up on the other game as well. I believe he's 4-0 at the moment. So,
Wow.
And Jono, I mean, obviously Jonathan's not scared of that, but at the same time, he seems to be struggling to get a board going. Is the quote that I have from the other table. So.
Wow, and that's without Vincent taking damage. So that means Vincent doesn't have a Sawyer just like ripping through the board. It means that he's actually just like trading spells and getting up ahead in other ways. So I feel like that last turn was a pretty big win for Z, where he got the extra resources spent on the Ramsar.
Just nullified any kind
And then he bounced him back, and he was really able to kind of push to this like board state now that is once again starting to look a little bit favourable for him. So once again, we've got a door gun on the table. If that gets back to being active, it deals with almost every one of Lee's forwards. So, as well as being efficient resource-wise, it also has the ability just to take out the most powerful things from Lee's deck. That looks like a lightning ability's just been used, the special ability.
There's Bart's down.
And in comes Gilgamesh.
Takes the extra point there. He's up to 5 points. It's Dorgan off.
Just clearing the board back out. It's a pain. Feels so good when you play a guy, you untap, you get the card back.
So we found what he was looking for in Lee's deck there. Takes the point.
Back on the swing. And that's a whacker. Wacker's rate is pretty good for an 8,000 power guy, alongside the rest of his abilities, the trick to combat, and the way that his ability can be used, that it's not like a tap ability. So you can just fire, like it's not a dole ability, so you can just fire it off
Yeah, yeah.
when you want. Kind of messes with combat's pretty good.
So apparently, Z has an Aerith and a Waka sitting there in his hand, but again, this
As
is
we
the
just
problem. Jason Lee
discussed,
doesn't know
though,
that, yeah.
the Waka's pretty good in these combat scenarios, so it's definitely an interesting hand that he's got. He's got the resources to do it, so. And here we go, this looks like Waka. Changing that lightning into 1,000 power.
It's just like an enfeeble kind of, removes any kind of. Yeah, I mean, it's the advantage of lightning is just how strong, how high that power level is. Down to 1,000. Yeah, like.
You're tiny.
Yeah.
You got Waka.
You got Waka.
So I'll see if there's a response here, because like Lee doesn't have a lot of cards, so.
So loses
Cool.
the lightning.
So we end up trading off our guys. Now those resources are looking real thin again on Lee's side. Kind of feel there's an interesting point in some games where it just becomes about damage and just about getting your, like where you like make this last stand and you dump all your cards to get as many forwards and as many things as you can on the table to try and
get it over the line.
Yeah, and sometimes that works out, sometimes that does not work out.
Credit to the people who are still watching in the hall there, being very quiet.
Yeah.
Then again, to be fair, so week is.
We've had a crowd outside in the past few rounds,
Yeah.
but now they're all in the hall watching the game. They want to get close to the action.
Just taking the point there. That's 5 damage.
5
for Jason
apiece. Cool, quite an aggressive
Lee.
attack
6
there.
damage.
So we're going to lay some forwards back down, and then that might mean that Lee's put in a spot where he can't really afford to attack.
I think it's kind of. There's only a few more turns left in this one.
Yeah, we're getting down to the end of it. I think we're going to see some permanents on tap again. Some of those backups, they like doing double duty. Oh no, we're not. It's draw a card by the look of things. Oh, it's the discard for the final card. Is that no hand for Lee?
No, he's still got. Yeah, he's got. I think he's.
It's hard because his hand's below the table,
Yeah,
which
he's
you know
doing the
somebody
poker
should
thing,
like.
yeah.
No, there's none of that in poker. It's all above the table for most card games. Okay, so he activates all his forwards using the Aerith, so he's bought himself
At least
a free
solid
swing,
defense, yeah.
basically, like a free 2 damage.
That's true.
You know, he's really looking, quite dangerous. Now, at the moment, like, it's really hard for Lee to attack. He needs to make sure he's got enough resources that he can defend himself, and he's got a Shinoto in hand. So he can wrath the board if he can afford it.
No,
He cannot.
Can't see it.
Yeah.
Yep. So we spotted the Shinoda as being maybe a big player, and then it went straight away to the graveyard. That wasn't even a consideration, it just went. That's another Steiner. So we can just kind of keep the gas going from Z's deck at the moment. I think Lee's out of cards. So he's got one card. It's on the table, right?
Yeah.
I think when Lee's hands go under the table, I think he's using that to, really try and relieve some stress and some pressure, like grabbing the legs tight or squeezing the hands tight, or trying just to keep the circulation happening. And but looking through the graveyards,
Yeah, seeing what,
through the discards.
we are starting to get up there a bit, but yeah, definitely
are.
favouring Z at this point.
I'm not even sure though. Like, I think he can activate a bunch of times if he needs to try and mill, but it looks like he's got like 7 or 8 cards in his deck. Because his deck keeps searching all game for cards, I think sometimes even though he has mill potential, he probably finds himself in a spot where his deck is a consideration. And here come the beaters. And that Zidane will be big right now because of the lack of cards
There's no
in Lee's
for
hand.
Jason Lee, yeah.
Yeah. So he's doing what he can to stay alive, but it doesn't look great. It looks like there's just not enough resources. There's too many guys to stop too many problems. Maybe he is hoping for a deck out. Maybe that's what's left.
Yeah, he's just hoping to kind of drag it out as long as he can, but I mean, I don't see.
You don't see it
I don't
going
see
that
it.
way, right?
Yeah, I can't see how he does it. Oh, really? So there's very few cards left on each side there.
Yeah, I think when we looked at Z's deck a turn ago, it was about 8 cards and he
Yeah.
just drew 2. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. And there's still activations from the backups. So we've got a party attack. The party attack has to be blocked. And that's it.
That's it. There you go.
Nice work, Jason Z.
Apparently he's going to Japan.
Woo!
There you go.
We're excited. Look at this. He's running out. He's come to join us.
The camera hasn't been changed. It's fine. All right. Well, on that note,
Okay.
can we get an update on the other game while we're waiting?
That was awesome.
Still 5-0. Apparently, Jono versus Vincent is still 5-0.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Cool.
Vincent's still keeping in there. But yeah, it's hey, Henry. Any update on the other game? Thank you.
Cool. So we must be getting
Yeah,
reasonably close
Jason
to...
Z winning with great humility there.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, cool.
It's nice to see when people are super
Look,
excited
it's
as well.
enthusiasm,
Like,
hey. I mean, at least they
it's
shook
a little
hands- at least they
infectious,
shook
isn't it?
hands first. Yeah,
Yeah.
but so it'll be interesting to see.
and he did say pre-tournament that if he
it's gonna
did
pop
make
off,
it
right,
to the
okay.
flight, that he
Kids
was
these
going to
days, I
like
understand.
go off his rocker. So, I'm not surprised to see that happen when it does actually happen.
I'll 6-0 Vincent.
Wow, so
No,
Vincent
6-0.
looks
Oh,
like
sorry, yeah,
he's
so Vincent's got 6 damage.
pushing into the finals.
Oh, so we've
Yeah, they're in game 3.
After conclusion of the second game, it will be finals.
okay.
Cool.
Yeah. So Vincent's up, nearly won it, I guess.
Yeah, so we're at 1-1, and Vincent has 6 points to 0 and a commanding board. So, you know, if we see a win from Jonathan, it's, you know.
Is that the other one? There we go. Yeah, just double check if that was Vincent screaming that out. I think he just managed to. There you go.
Oh, wow.
So our two finalists are Vincent versus
Jason Z.
Z.
Cool.
Well, there we go.
Awesome, and they're both super excited, and they try to match each other's enthusiasm at making that final. So, you know,
both very humble gentlemen.
Now we're playing for pride. Now it's just to see who the national champion is.
Trophy. Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, they're both pretty shiny.
Yeah, they were very nice. They were very nice. So we might take 5-10 minutes to get set up. Yeah, so they're going to take 5-10 minutes to get set up, and then we'll be back with the final of Vincent Scanlon versus Jason Z. See you guys on the other side.
See you guys.